1962. This is before people of hue and melanin began to really deal with breaking ceilings in terms of corporate thinking. But yet by every step of following this inner voice of God, even though I didn't know him by name, I just knew there was an unction, an instinct. By encountering this voice, I began to recognize that if I listened and I paid attention to this inner core, this inner voice, many of you in biology would call it the vagus nerve. But that vagus nerve had to have a creator of it that now begins to be that part that talks to our inner core self. And if you begin to listen to the Holy Spirit, the Bible speaks to it, it will begin to lead you and guide you. I say that to you because if I disenfranchise any of you, it's because truly my wife and I, we don't work for money anymore. God has already blessed us, but I must tell the truth that many of us fail to achieve what we have been called to do in this Job 2:28 period because we're not listening to the inner voice that would guide us to innovation and creativity. And as one who goes around the world, my wife and I, training people, we began to train people that if you can listen to that quiet voice, if you will just tune in to that quiet voice, that visions and dreams will come, ideas will spur. But we've been so busy, even many of those in ministry, we've been so busy, we just don't take time to listen anymore. But as I was listening and as I've been teaching, and we teach every month somewhere in the world, as we teach around the world, we teach people to bring the invisible to the physical, because I really believe that is the assignment of believers, is to bring the invisible forces that cannot be seen into the physical realm on earth as it is in heaven. I'm giving you where this idea came from so that you won't give Al Hollingsworth or Hattie or team any glory, but I began to recognize as I began to listen to this voice that I had been reading about so much, Jesus turning water to wine, that the multitude being fed, coin taken from a fish's mouth. All of this is taken, he says that in our great assignment in Genesis 1 is that we are to be masters. And a master is defined as one who has the capacity to convert, has the ability to convert logic into reality. Those things that are invisible, but yet you can see them on the inside. And so I began to think about that for a moment, and he's called us to be a master and able to influence the thought, the opinion, the behavior of those things that we have been defined as master of. That God told us that we were to be masters of his things. And when I began to look as a student of physics, I began to look at quantum physics and understanding that everything that exists as a combination of three base particles, protons and neutrons and electrons. And that if we begin to understand that everything is just a recombination of those base elements of protons and neutrons and electrons, and that if we can begin to open up our minds in a quantum thinking level, begin to open up our minds and begin to think now that if we could reconvert, which is what everything exists of, the floor, the table, our bodies, all of it is made up of base elements of protons, neutrons, and electrons, that if we could begin to go to the base form, the quantum form, and reorganize, convert those basic elements, nothing is impossible. Energy exchange, the first law of energy exchange is energy can neither be created nor destroyed, only converted. First law of energy conversion. And left unto itself, the second law says energy will fall from order to disorder. And so when you begin to combine those two basic physics truths that we live in this world by, in energy transference, you recognize that without a source, this energy that cannot be created nor destroyed, only converted and left unto itself, second law, falls from order to disorder, that there has to be a force in this decay or this entropy or this fall from order to disorder. There has to be a force in it, but not of it, but yet greater than it. And so I began to think about this concept that there has to be a force, another force that is able to now convert. And as a man of God, I began to recognize that Jesus said the same thing. He said that we need the Holy Spirit. That left alone, we cannot convert ourselves. Now, again, let me tell you, this, I'm not preaching. I'm just telling you where this came from because I was asked to do so. And I began to say, now look, water conversion. How did he do that? What is impossible? And I'm not saying water is in how we're doing it, but it began to quicken the thought. Nothing is impossible. When you can convert protons, neutrons, and electrons, and if you begin to explore and begin to put the right minds together. And I began to call together some of the greatest minds. And it's amazing, when God gives one an idea, favor seems to come his way. And that's why I was talking about grace, favor. And we begin to draw wonderful people. We've got engineers and Nicole Smith, a genius young lady that has been in our lives for so long. And you're going to meet one of our young men, Mike, that is an engineer for over 20 years, and ideas that began to be birthed in them. And how we can now begin to do what has previously people have thought impossible. And